Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Doing great. Thanks so much for taking some time to kind of recap your progress and sort of pay it forward to other people who've been struggling. It means a lot. I really appreciate that.
Okay, welcome.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll keep it nice and light and breezy. It's just going to be a nice informal conversation. And let's start with just kind of, what prompted you to be looking for some solutions for your mental health? Can you kind of describe where you were at, what you were struggling with, and kind of for how long?
I've been struggling for quite a while, and I just know I needed to do something to change what direction I'm going.
Yeah, tell us about what kind of headspace you felt like you were in, especially prior to joining the program. What was going on with your thoughts, your feelings, that kind of thing.
Well, just not being able to stay focused on one or two particular, just being all over the place and doing several different things at the same time.
Yeah. And I know that we focused a lot on your career in particular. Do you mean like an inability to be focused kind of in general or career-wise specifically?
In general, just
Mhm.
in general.
Gotcha. And where did you find your thoughts were kind of darting to, right? If it was tough to focus, that probably means your mind was getting pulled in different directions. What were those kinds of things?
Just get focused on this and this and this, and not really sticking to a plan and a specific goal. I would have goals, but I wouldn't follow through with them.
Gotcha. And was that beyond professional goals as well, personal too?
Yes, it was.
So what were some of the things that you had been wanting to move forward on that you hadn't been moving forward on effectively?
Weight loss was one thing. I wanted to lose some weight. About 30, 40 pounds was one goal I wanted to stay focused on.
Good for you. And then also a pretty substantial career change too, right?
Yes, yeah, being self-employed and staying focused on that. And when things get sort of tight, I would go back to working somewhere, and then I wouldn't have time to work with my auto appraisal business.
Right. Yeah, I remember from our very first conversation, I could kind of feel this tug of war going on with you, where on the one hand, there was this desire for certainty, this desire for comfort and stability and kind of keeping things the same. And that had caused you, correct me if I'm wrong, but had caused you to kind of stay in a career path that was really not very fulfilling to you, being even at an organization that you weren't super thrilled with, but you felt like you had to stay there because it was secure. It was sort of certain. Is that fair to say?
Right. Yes, it was. Yes.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, I kind of also sensed in you, of course, you've got this like yearning to grow and expand and do more, right? Your big passion, of course, and your real expertise and skill set, of course, is being an expert in car value, car appraisal, all
Right.
that. And you really wanted to become sort of your own boss in a way, right? Like have your own book
Right.
of business. But of course,
Yes.
that's a lot less certain. So there's that kind of the reason I'm bringing that up is I think a lot of people who will see this interview will be able to relate with that tug of war between wanting the certainty, wanting to stay in a particular mode of life because it
Mhm.
feels secure, but it feels like a prison almost. You know what I mean? Like it feels very trapping. You feel very limited. Is that fair to say that you're kind of feeling like that?
Yes, it was.
And it's like all the fulfillment goes out the window, all the joy, the pride, the self-esteem kind of takes a back seat. So now you're embracing a lifestyle where you're creating your own certainty, right? You are the source of it as opposed to pulling it from the outside world. Would you say that's right?
Yes, that is correct. Mhm.
Gotcha. Cool. So, what do you think, kind of looking back on it? We've been talking, having conversations for the past couple of months. I usually like to, on these interviews, try to boil down like two or three big takeaways, that we can kind of pass on to somebody else who might be more in a position similar to how you started. So, someone who maybe doesn't believe in themselves, someone who doesn't have a lot of confidence, they can go after their goals, someone who's clinging to that sort of certainty. What do you think as you went through the program? What was like one or two takeaways that you feel like you had, realizations?
Have more confidence in myself and believe I can do it and stick to a plan to make that happen.
Where did you draw that confidence from? Like, did you just kind of decide, okay, I need to believe in myself, or was it kind of taking your mind down a different path? Like, what do you think generated the confidence?
Well, some of the lessons I would do, learning and practices and skill sets sort of
Mhm.
directed me towards that.
Okay, gotcha. And so you're talking more about like the granular things we did, like
Yes.
helping you train your brain to focus on things that empower you. Probably a lot of adjustments to your internal dialogue and language, stuff like that.
Right. Correct. Yes. Mhm.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay. And so, do you feel like your overall kind of outlook towards life has changed where, maybe your old outlook was more about certainty? Like, what is your life about now if it's not primarily about getting certainty?
Well, staying focused on goals that I want to achieve and working towards those goals. And when I get distracted or discouraged, we focus back to that.
I'm curious to hear your take on this, but it seemed like when we got started, your mind was doing what a lot of our minds do, where you wanted to kind of know the exact plan. You wanted to know it was all going to work. You wanted to know that you weren't going to fail or make mistakes, right? You wanted to kind of know things in advance. And now, we've talked a lot about different business strategies, and you're trying a lot of different things. You're just kind of putting yourself out there even before you have the certainty that a particular thing is going to work. You're just getting yourself into motion, it seems like. Is that right?
Right. Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. Mhm.
So, in a way, it seems like you're just more focused on growth, really, right? Like, how do
Right.
I just get closer? How do I make progress day by day?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
So
Correct.
as you've been focusing more on that, how has that changed how you feel? You said it's made you feel more confident. Do you feel like you're feeling more like self-esteem, like more pride, perhaps too?
Yeah. I had a little more pride in myself and self esteem and
Yeah,
in myself. And
good for you. That's great. And was there any other kind of it's okay if the answer is no or if you're not entirely sure, but kind of looking back on it, were there any other kind of key things where you're like, oh wow, I've never really thought about it that way? Or like any kind of like changes in how you were approaching things, anything that you kind of remember being like a light bulb, something that you'd think would be helpful to pass on to other people?
you talked about incantations, and saying stuff that I really didn't realize that I'm saying to myself. My mindset was not as positive as I thought it was.
Right. What were some of the old things you were saying to yourself that you've broken the habit of?
Well, I can't do this, or it's not going to work, or it's a waste of time,
Mhm.
and stuff like that.
Gotcha. And what have you replaced that with? What's the kind of narratives going on in your mind now?
Well, yes, I can do it, and I can try different things and at least make the effort to try different things. It may or
Mm.
may not work, but make the effort and not just automatically disqualify myself from trying it.
Right. Yeah, good for you. So you're giving yourself permission to stumble and not do things perfectly all the time too. Sounds
Right,
like.
correct. Yes.
Yeah. Which opens up so many more doors. Now it's like, wow, I can try all sorts of stuff because my self-worth is not on the line anymore. Right.
Right.
It's like if I fail, that doesn't mean I'm a failure. It just means, no, I tried that thing, it didn't quite work. We didn't focus a ton on relationships. We focused a lot on, confidence and, your dialogue with yourself and your business and getting your business up off the ground. And I'm really proud of you for putting in so much extra elbow grease and, things are starting to roll forward business wise. Do you feel like any relationships have changed at all? Sometimes that happens, sometimes not. Just as, people's confidence shifts a little bit.
Relationship changed a little bit. Still work in progress on that with my wife, and having first thing have a little more confidence in myself. She is a little more um, secure in what I'm doing and not as concerned.
Yeah, so your confidence has helped create more confidence in her.
Right,
So,
correct.
so there's more of an alignment there. That's great. I'm curious, now that you got out of that old job, like how did it feel to say, okay, this old job that I've been married to for so long, I'm done with it, and I'm saying yes to this new chapter in my life, and I'm going all in. Like, how did that feel going through that transition for you?
I was a little scary at first. I was a little unsure, and I had goals I set out to accomplish and stayed focused on what I wanted to do, and
Mhm.
not what I felt I had to do.
And do you feel like your mind was making it out to be bigger than it ended up being? Like once you just committed and dove headfirst into it?
Yes, yes. My mom was making it more of an issue than it really was.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's always the case. So how does it feel now that you've got a couple of weeks of momentum, you're figuring things out, you're learning what works, what doesn't work? How are you feeling now that the ball's rolling?
I feel more confidence and more focused on what I want to do.
Is your outlook on the future changed compared to where it was a few months ago?
I'd say it has, yes. I've been seeing something that I can do for a long term
Yeah.
focus on this.
And I'm assuming that the work you're doing now kind of gives you more energy as opposed to the work you were doing before, it kind of takes all the energy out of you, sort of thing, right?
Right, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to do, not doing something I had to do to survive.
Had to. Yeah. Good for you. Awesome. So now that you've got this newfound confidence, you're obviously putting it towards your career. You're obviously, using it to create more alignment in your marriage. Fantastic. Is there anything else that is kind of on the horizon for you in the future, like something that you maybe are looking forward to, just in general or specific? Like anything that maybe a couple months ago you wouldn't have thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put my energy behind that. Like, do you feel like there's anything else you want to kind of plant your flag and say, oh, this is something I want in the future?
Just recently signed up to do some volunteer work and being certified to help with disaster relief, something I've
Wow, cool.
wanted to do and I've thought about it, but I've never put the effort towards doing that.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. That's really exciting. And is there anything that you would want to say to yourself from like 4 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago? Someone who is dealing in that same spot, someone who is feeling stuck, someone who maybe was doubting themselves, doubting their abilities, someone who was not sure if they could pursue their dreams or make a big life change, like a career shift. What would be kind of your advice to someone in that spot?
Look at your mindset, look at what is preventing you from thinking you cannot do that, and set out to change something that really is important to you and stop putting it off.
That's a great one, honestly, because I remember one of the very first things we went through is, and this will be a good takeaway to wrap things up for people, but you may remember one of the first things I taught you was what we call the thought cycle,
Hmm.
where, very often we get frustrated because we're not following through on a behavior and we
Right,
want to change that behavior, but we don't realize that the behavior is what happens as a byproduct of the emotions we feel, and the emotions we feel are a byproduct of the thoughts we have. So it's thoughts as the first step, and then emotions as the second step, and then behavior as the third step. And most
right.
people just focus on the behavior. So we kind of retraced your steps. We figured out, okay, well, what are you feeling regularly? And
Hmm.
then, we realized it was a lack of confidence, anxiety, that type of thing. And then we kind of peeled back the onion, like, okay, well, what are all the thoughts that are going on subconsciously that are driving you to feel that way, that are making you avoid these behaviors that you really want to do? So, you really dug deep and you created the shifts, but more importantly, you created the shifts at the core of the issue, right? You retrain the brain to think differently by default. And
Right,
that's why things are working well for you. Well, obviously, your journey is just getting started. This isn't a finish line, it's a starting
right,
line, really.
right.
And you've got plenty more growth to do. And I'm incredibly excited for what you do. I am excited for all the clients you're going to serve. I know you're an expert in your area. And if anybody is looking to get an appraisal on a car, they need to look you up, right?
Yeah,
Especially
yes.
if they're in the Arkansas area. So
Right, correct.
maybe someone will, from our audience, will find you one day. And we really, really appreciate you taking some time to share your insights with the community. It really
Okay.
means a lot. And it's been a pleasure working with you, my friend. It's not going
Okay.
to be goodbye. Just see you later. Any last
Right.
words you want to share to the other people listening?
Just stay focused, and if you really want to do something, just do everything you can possible to follow through and stay on a path to complete your goals.
Fantastic. Timeless advice. I love it. All right, John, it's been a pleasure working with you these past couple months. Hopefully, our paths cross again. And until then, I wish you and your wife all the best. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Bless you, John. Take care.
You
Bye.
too. Thank you. Goodbye.